Hi and welcome to the course. One of the easiest ways to run Linux is simply to run it online. So there are several ways to run it online. We can type that in Google or any search engine. And then you can run Linux systems online, for example on btrfs.org. Simply open the link btrfs.org/jslinux. Then we can run systems online, for example the top one. And it's starting Linux in this small window. So we have a simple Linux console where you can then type commands. So we can interact here with this command line interface. If you want a full Linux experience, you can download Linux from several websites. Now, important thing to know about Linux is that there's very many systems based on Linux. So for example, your Android phone is based on Linux. Several other Linux systems exist. Now, some of the most famous Linux-based systems are Ubuntu. You can get it from ubuntu.com, from get.opensuse.org, and Fedora from fedoraproject.org. Now, important here to know is that all of these Linux systems are basically very similar. So there is some minor differences between these Linux systems, but basically it comes down to the same thing, just differently. So they're all Linux based and all of the tools and software is more or less the same. The main difference is in how the system itself is managed. So how you can install and remove software, how you can run updates and things like that. So these are the main popular Linux systems. So Ubuntu, SUSE and Fedora. And all of them are free. So for example, if we click download now, we can go back to here, go to download. Ubuntu desktop, get Ubuntu desktop. Then you can download it here. Download Ubuntu. Download, and it starts downloading Ubuntu Linux. And depending on the Linux system, you might need 5 GB or more to download the whole installation disk. Other systems is the same, so if you go to get.opensuse.org, if you want this Linux system, you can click download, and it will download the system. You see here, you can download the system, an image. If you click download, it will start downloading SUSE as well. And Fedora, the same thing. So if you want the Fedora system, go to fedoraproject.org and then download. So the workstation one, download now, and then download it. Then once you have those Linux system downloaded, you'll see you have a .iso file. So whichever Linux system you use, you have a .iso file, and then you have to put that in a USB disk. For Fedora, you can use the Fedora Media Writer. For the other Linux systems, they don't come with writer program. You can use another tool for that. Now, one of these tools is Balena Etcher. If you go to etcher.balena.io, you have this program. If you click download, you can download the writer of those images. So what you will need is a USB stick and of those Linux ISO files. Then once that download is complete, you start this program. You can select the ISO file in the first step, select image, then select your USB drive and then click flash. Then you'll have a USB stick with Linux on it. You can reboot your computer and start from the USB disk, and it will start Linux. So those are some common ways to run Linux. So either run it directly in your browser using btrfs.org/jslinux, or you can use the cloud. So you can rent a server from DigitalOcean, Vultr or such things, or this free option btrfs.org/jslinux. If you really want to run Linux on a computer, you can use any of these systems like Ubuntu, SUSE or Fedora. And then once you download the file, you'll need a USB stick to write it on, and to restart your computer with the USB stick inside. So that's how are the possible ways to start Linux. Hey, welcome back to our Linux tutorial series. Let's talk about one of the most basic yet powerful commands in Linux, the ls command. The ls command stands for list. Then if you open a terminal, you can type the ls command and see the files in a folder. And you'll see here several files, txt files, but it also lists the folders. So the ls command allows you to view files and directories in the current directory. So in the directory you are in. So in this case, in the home directory, you'll see they are identical. By default, if you open a terminal, you see the home directory. So the ls command or list command allows you to list any files or folders, and it can take parameters. For example, you can specify -l, and that stands for long format. It provides more detailed information about each file and directory. So let's make it a bit larger. And you'll see we get the same list with files and folders, but we also see here, you'll see which user and which group own the file. And you'll see about permissions, which look a bit cryptic. So you can get more information by specifying a parameter, in this case -l. It outputs it in long format. Now, by default, there are hidden files, but they are not shown. You can click here, View Hidden Files, Show Hidden Files, and you'll see hidden files are with a dot in front. Now, if we type ls, we don't see those hidden files. So if we specify or add the -a parameter, short for all, it shows all hidden files and directories. So ls -al, then also the hidden files and folders will be shown. And you'll see we have all those hidden files. Everything with a dot in front is a hidden file or folder. Now, instead of ls -l, which is a bit longer, we'll list the files and folders with the details. You can simply type ll and press enter, and you have the same output. So that's a nice shortcut, just pressing those two letters. And you get the same details, but also the files and folders. Now, if you list files in a folder, for example with images or other types of files, you might be interested in the file size. So you can list the file size in human readable format using this command. So it shows you the files sorted by size. That's why the big S is here. And the H is for a human readable format. So you'll see in kilobytes the size of the files. Now, if you want another size format, for example megabytes, you can add -- block size is M, then it will show you in megabytes. Or if you want gigabytes, you can show how many gigabytes. Now, because these files are so small, this doesn't make any sense. So just using the kilobyte size, the default size, makes more sense here, and then you'll see the sizes of every image, similar to how you would see that in the File Explorer. So in the File Explorer here, if we sort by size, you'll see they are roughly the same. You see 166 kilobyte for the first one, 106, 51, 46, 43, and you'll see that the main difference here is in the terminal, those numbers are rounded. So they're rounded up, and in the File Explorer they are not rounded up. So small detail, but that's how you can see the file size. If you do it without human readable format, you'll see it in bytes, which might make sense to you, but these days files can get so large that it just doesn't make sense to express it in size in bytes. So either display in kilobyte format using this parameter, or display it in gigabytes or megabytes format. So depending on the size of all your files in the directory. Of course, you can show it in by default, but it depends on the file size if that makes sense. If you have small text files, okay, then it might make sense, but for anything larger than that, it doesn't really make sense. So that is the basic ls command. The ls command just shows you files in a directory, in the current directory. You'll see I'm in the directory pictures. You can check the current directory pwd, and those are the same files. If I delete a file and then list again, you'll see that file is then deleted. The file is no longer there. So it matches the graphical interface. It's exactly the same, except that now you're doing it in the terminal. And with the ls you can list the files and folders. Welcome back. So let's take a look at two other commands, essential commands for navigating through the Linux file system, cd and pwd. The cd command stands for change directory. With the cd command, you can switch between directories within the file system. So just like you would in the file manager, you can, let me remove the hidden files, you can go through directories and you can click through them. So cd allows you to do that in the terminal. So if we list the files in the directory and folders, you'll see we have the same directories and we can enter them using the cd command. So we type cd space and then the directory name. Now we're in the desktop directory. We can check that with the command pwd. And of course we can list files and folders. Now, how do we go back to the home directory? So /home/kali. We type the command cd ... That moves up one directory. And if we check with pwd, you'll see we're again in /home/kali. So let's try that again. We list the folders. Let's say we go into the picture directory, cd pictures, pwd to check the current directory. And list the files and folders if you want to. We're going back to the previous directory and type cd ... pwd, and we're again in /home/kali. If we list the files and folders, you'll see it's again the same. So far we used relative paths, so we enter a directory we actually see right now, for example music, and then we would be in the music directory. But you can use absolute paths as well. So what is an absolute path? The full path to a directory. For example, cd home, kali, say desktop, and we are instantly in the desktop directory. So you can use full directories, full paths as well. You can enter the pictures directory, or you might just enter the root directory of the system, so /. You see now we're in the / directory. Then we can go back immediately to the directory that you want to be. So you don't have to type cd for every directory you want to enter. You can use absolute paths as well. And a nice little trick is if you type cd /home/ whatever your username is, you can press the tab key, and many Linux systems then list the current folders and directories, so you can just tap through them for some of the Linux systems. So this doesn't work on every Linux system, but on some Linux systems you can just tap through them, and that's an easy way to get into a directory. So just remember, you don't have to type cd specific directory. You can type the full path and then you're instantly in the directory. Now let's say we go to around the system, so we type cd / current directory. Let's list the folders. You see all kind of folders here. We could go in the etc directory, pwd, show the folders or show the current directory. Now let's say we want to go back to the home directory. Instead of typing cd /home/ your username, you can just type cd, check the current directory, and you're automatically back. So if you type cd without any folders, you're instantly in your home directory, in your user directory. Let's say we go to the pictures directory and then we type cd, we are back in our home directory. You can check that with pwd. Now the cd commands also keep some kind of history. So if we type cd pictures, and let's say we then change to another directory, for example /music, we might want to go back to the previous directory. So one way to do it is to type the full path as we did before, but we can also type cd space minus, and then it goes automatically back to the previous directory. So we can check the current directory in music, cd minus, and then we are back in the pictures directory. So nice little trick to go to a previous directory to use before. So that sums up the cd command. Cd is short for change directory or change folder, and you can use it to navigate through the file system, combined with pwd to show the current directory and the ls command to show the folders and files in the current folder. So very useful, this combination of cd, pwd and ls. Remember them and practice around, because together you will be able to navigate the file system with these three commands. Hey there, Linux enthusiasts. We're going to dive into some essential file and directory management commands. So let's start with the mkdir command, which stands for make directory or make folder. It allows you to create new folders within your file system. Let's go up a directory. We are in the home directory. Let's make a new folder. So this command makes a new folder with this name. If we check in the file explorer, you'll see there's a new directory created. Now you can create as many directories as you want. So let's make another, and let me resize this a bit to show you. So let's make another folder. Okay. Make there, and then let's say we make a directory audio, and you see that is added to the file system. So mkdir, it does nothing more than make directory. So the same as right click, create folder. Now there are more commands besides making new directories. So for example, you can use the touch command to create files. You see that made a new file, new txt file. So those files are then automatically created using the touch command, whatever file you want. And doesn't have to be uppercase, can be lowercase. You can have lowercase characters in there. You can also have spaces in there if you put it between quotes. So if you use quotes, you can say so different ways. If you want to use spaces, you use quotes around it. Otherwise, you can just use underscore. Without the quotes, that wouldn't work. So you need the quotes if you want to have a file with a space in it. So with the touch command, you can create new files. Now all of these files, of course, are empty. It's just a way to quickly create empty files without any content. With the mv command, you can move them. For example, let's say we have list.txt and you want to move them to documents. You can either do it like this because we are in the home directory, or you can use the absolute path. So let's say file, and then you can say home to your user. Now, alternatively, there's a shortcut for home directory, which is like this. And then you can move them to documents. Now, of course, specify what file. So let's say list example, and we move that to documents. Now, if we take a look in the documents directory, all of the files are now in there. So with these commands, also essential commands on the Linux file system, you can move files around, you can create directories, and create new files. Now let's say you want to delete a file. You can do that with the rm command. So rm and then remove, and then the file name, for example, example.txt. And you see that file exists here. So let's run the command, and the file is now gone. Now, unlike in the traditional graphical interface, when you delete a file, it is really gone from your system. There is not any trash can. So if you delete something with the graphical interface, it always goes to the trash can, right? But when you delete a command or delete a file with the rm command, it doesn't go to any trash can, it just deletes it. So you won't find that file in the trash can if you run the delete command. You can do this command for directories as well. So you can delete a directory, and now those directories are gone. So now practice around with those commands. You should be able to create folders, delete folders, create files, and move files around in the file system using these commands. So I'll see you in the next video, and keep watching. Welcome back to the Linux course. We'll look at some powerful file inspection commands. So first, let's start with the cat command, short for concatenate. This command allows you to display the contents of a file in the terminal. similar to how you could do it with Notepad or similar programs. So we type cat, C-A-T, and then any file name that is in your home directory. For example, this file, you'll see it outputs the file contents, and it is a very long file of numbers and words. So you can do that with the cat commands. So if you would open it with a text editor, in this case mousepad, you'll see the same contents. If I scroll down all the way to the bottom, it's a quite large file, you'll see the same contents, exactly the same. So the cat commands allows you to quickly see the contents of a file, and it outputs all of the contents in the terminal. However, it is quite everything at once, so you immediately scroll to the bottom. What if you just want to see a part of the file? Then you can combine it with the less command. So type less and then the file name, and you have this interface where it doesn't directly jump to the bottom of the file. So if I open with mousepad, and you'll see this is the top of the file. And now we can jump through the file by page. So if you press the space bar, you'll see it jumps through the file every time you press the space bar. So it's a much more easy way if you have a large file to look through the file. So as the name implies, less command shows less. It only shows a part of the file, and then by spacebar you can browse through it. Now if you want to quit, you press the Q key. So Q, and it exits. So again, press Q and it quits. So that is the less command. Now you might have different files in your file system. Now in this directory we have some text files and list files. So let's say we want some information about a file, then we can type file and then the name of the file, for example john.lst, and you see this is a link to another file. Let's do another wifi.txt. You'll see also this file is a link to the file here. So let's take a look at that file, and you'll see it's just a text file. Okay, let's enter the pictures directory, some other files. Let's say we type file with this file, and it will tell you, okay, this is a JPEG file, which you probably might already have guessed from the extension. And then it gives some information like the width and height of the image and some other details. So if we pick another file, you'll see also the width and height, but it's different for that file, and also it's a JPEG and so on. So the file command gives you some information or some details about a file, a bit similar to doing right-click properties, where you might see some information on a file. Now the cat command only shows text. So if you try the cat command with an image, it will just show a mess because images are not stored as text. So cat can only display image files, or sorry, can only display text files. So cat with any text file, and it can be displayed. But if you have another file format like an audio file or a video or a picture, then cat will just output mess into your terminal. So just gibberish would be shown inside the terminal. Now there are some programs to, for example, see pictures and other things, but they are not default Linux commands. For example, there's the command ranger, which lets you see images in a directory, but that's not installed on Linux systems by default. However, you can install it. Let's say you type ranger and press yes. You can then install that program. And then if you type ranger, you can then see images using the command line. So of course it would start a graphical interface. For example, let's say this picture, we press enter and then we see the picture. So it's possible, but it's an external program. So there are more command line programs available for Linux because the original Linux system doesn't have such functionality. Hey awesome folks, let's dive into the magical world of permissions with two powerful commands, chown and chmod. Alright, picture this. We have a pictures folder. If I list the files in that folder, you'll see all of those files are owned by the same user. All of them are owned by Kali. All of them are owned by Kali. And so you can change those permissions with the command chown. And chown command is like saying, hey, I want this to belong to another person. Can be the boss, who is then the boss of the file. So it's all about changing ownership. So chown, and let's say we want this to belong to the user root, the super user. We can type root, and then, for example, the file. And then to do that, you often need to be the super user to have administrator access. And to do that, you type sudo in front. So if we do that, now we list again the files, and you'll see that file now belongs to root. And that's because we typed the command chown here. Chown. That changes the permission to the user root and the group root. So if we go into the pictures folder, you'll see we have some of those files, and the one we changed is bridge. If we try to open it, you'll see that we can't open it. You can do right-click properties, and you'll see that this now belongs to the user root. The owner of this file is root. That's why we can't open it. So with chown, you can change the permission of a file. You can change the ownership of a file. So let's now talk about permissions. So if we go up a directory, files can have permissions. We can create a new file, and you can add all kinds of permissions. For example, this file is not executable. If you want it to be executable, you can type chmod +x for executable, and then the file name. So now the file will be executable, but because it's a text file, it doesn't make sense. So let's remove the execution ability. So we type -x, and now that permission is removed. It might be you want to remove the write permission. So you can type -w with the file name. Now the file is not writable. You see a little lock here. So if you try to edit the file and save, you'll see the file is read-only. So that's because we we remove the write permission from the file. You can edit again by doing plus. Now, of course, you can also do the same thing for the read permission. So if you do -r, then we are no longer able to read the file. You see the icon changed here. To put that permission back, plus. So all files have permissions: read, write, and execute. So right-click on properties, you can often see those permissions. So you can click on permissions, and you'll see access, read only, read and write, and so on. So on any graphical interface, any file manager, you're able to see permissions. You can also see them if you list the folder. So if we list files, and maybe we're only interested in the specific file, so you can add that to the end. Then you can see the permissions here, but this might look a little bit cryptic. So what does this mean, all these symbols? So the R symbol is for read, so users can read and groups can read. Now the W stands for write. So write permissions means that the user can write, but in this case the group cannot write. So this is just another way to display the permissions for files. Read, write, and execute permissions. For example, if I make it executable and then list it again, you'll see that there's now an X in there for executable. If I were to remove it, list again, you'll see that's now been changed again. So this is just another way, all these symbols, it just displays the file permissions. Similar to if you right click on properties and then go to permissions, you also see the permissions. For example, you have this option here, allow this file to run as program. Let's say we have selected, close, and then list again. You'll see the X has been added. So underneath that graphical interface here, it just runs all of those terminal commands. So it runs chmod +x with the file name. Now I removed that permission, and you'll see if I click on it in permissions, it's again gone. So behind the scenes, these graphical interfaces, those file managers, are just running the Linux commands. Hi Linux explorers. Let's unveil some more secrets of the Linux file system. Let's kick it up a notch. So let's copy and delete files. It's like playing digital chess with your files. So let's talk about these powerful commands. Copying files is a piece of cake with the command cp. Makes digital copies similar to photocopies. You can duplicate anything. It doesn't matter what file format, if it's a text file, an image file, or any other thing. So you type cp, short for copy, and then the file name, and then the destination, and make sure you're in the right directory. So you'll see I'm in the pictures directory, so we need to copy from the pictures directory. And you see we have the source file, the source name, and the destination. And if you look to your right, when I press enter, you'll see the file is duplicated. Now you can use the cp command as many times as you want. cp will copy the file exactly as you have it on your computer. And this works for any file, right? So if we pick another file, you'll see it gets copied. Now you can do that as many times as you want. To delete it, just type rm with the file name. And you'll see they are now deleted. You can also delete a bunch of them with rm and rf. If you have a directory, you can do that. So let's say you wanted to delete the pictures directory, you could either do rm dir pictures or rm-rf pictures. So that would delete files. And you can copy files from one directory to another. For example, we can copy from the pictures directory some image, and then copy it to our home directory. So like this or like this would copy it to our home directory. In my case, the user is called Kali, so that might be different on your computer. For a more universal approach, just try this. And that would copy the picture to your home directory. Now, of course, the picture must exist in your pictures directory, otherwise nothing will be copied. So that's the cp command and the delete commands. Now, if you have a large file, like the list we had before, so we had a large file with passwords, then you might be interested in searching through that file. So you can do that with grep. So if you type would output the file, and you can select matches in that file by typing grep. So you might want to grab a certain word, let's say computer, and then it grabs all of the lines from the text file that contain the word computer. And this works for any word you pick. So let's say we pick course, and we get all of the words in the text file or lines in the text file that contain that word. So grep is a nice little tool, and this is how you would use it. So you first output the whole file, then you save the output using this little pipe symbol, and then you grab whatever word you're looking for. Now it can be a single word or it can be a phrase, it doesn't really matter. It can even be a single character. It will search through your file. So very powerful tool, this grep command. So there you have it. Copy, delete, and search within a file. It's also possible to search on the Linux file system itself using the find command. So if you use find, you can search for files on the file system. So you can do that with this command, find, and then you specify that you want to search for a file, dash name, and then test. For example, let's say we want to search for a file, any file with the word woman in it, and we type an asterisk at the end and press enter. And then it finds in your file system files with that name. So you can now copy files, delete files, search within files, and search for specific files on your Linux file system just using the terminal. So in practice, you don't need to use any graphical interface at all to do what the file system does. You can do everything through the command line with those simple commands. And sometimes that's easier and sometimes that's more difficult, depending on the type of files you're working with. So for most text files or anything text related, the terminal is often easier. There's also many terminal text editors. So if you want to edit a file, you can use tools like Nano or Vim. Let's say we type Nano with a text file, let's say test.txt. We can now type just like with Notepad or Mousepad, and then press Ctrl O to save, enter, and Ctrl X. And now if we were to output it again, you'll see it has the file contents. So we changed the file contents with a terminal text editor called Nano. There are many other editors like Vim, VI, and many editors which are quite a bit more learning curve. So the Nano text editor is really easy for if you're just getting started with Linux. Play around with it and edit files. So the terminal is really great if you're doing anything text related. For graphical things, I mean, even if we go to the picture directories, we don't see any pictures, right? We can only see that the files are there. So for picture related or audio files and so on, it makes more sense to use the graphical interface. But for text related things, the terminal interface is great. Welcome back. So all these commands, it can be quite challenging to get used to them. So if you want an easier way to navigate around the file system in the meantime, there are some terminal or command line programs that you can use to navigate around your computer. One of them is the Midnight Commander, short MC. So this has a bit of a 90s look, and you can use this to move around your file system. So let's install it. You can install it with your package manager. Make sure to run that as administrator, which you can do with this sudo command. This will install it, and this is the name of the program, Midnight Commander, or short MC. So make sure to install that. It's not a very large program, and it's completely text-based, so completely command line interface or text interface. So this will install that program. And now that it is installed, we can simply run it. Let's clear the screen. We can simply run it by typing MC and press enter. So then you'll see this interface, a real 90s interface, where you have two panes side by side. You have the left side and the right side. So we can simply use the arrow keys to move up and down and see whatever is inside the directory. So to see, we press the enter key, and then it goes in the directory. We can press enter again on the dot dot, and it will go up one directory. So you can do this for any directory. Just press enter, and you can see inside any directory. Now you have two of these panes. So why is that? You can check two different directories at the same time. So if you press the tab key, it will go to the other on the right, to the other screen, and we can open another directory here. For example, videos. And let's say we want to browse around, so let's say we go to the desktop directory. Okay, we can stay in this desktop directory. We can go back to the first left side, so we press tab again. Let's say here we go to the pictures directory. So now we have two different directories open, the pictures directory and the desktop directory. We can copy from the left side to the right side by pressing the F5 key. You'll see on the bottom here, it shows F5. Now I can make this a bit larger. So with the F5, we can copy the file to the other directory. So we press F5, asks you where to copy it to, and just press enter, and it will copy it to the right side. So now that file has been copied to the desktop. And we can do that with any file. So let's say the second one, F5, and it will copy it to the right side. If you want to delete it, we can press tab, and then we press the F8 key. You'll see the options at the bottom of the screen. So you have options. We can press F8 to delete. So we press F8, asks you if you want to delete. Yes. F8, yes. So this is a way you can navigate the Linux file system without actually typing commands. So you can just press the F keys and use the arrow keys to browse around your system and do different things. For example, we have the make directory here. So if we press F7, we can make a new directory. Let's say example, and you'll see that directory has now been created. We can go in the directory just by pressing the enter, or we can go into the folder, press enter. Let's say we go back to the other, by pressing tab, the other window. We go up, and maybe we want to copy some file. Let's say hello.txt here. So we press F5, and it will copy it to the right side. Okay, once you finished using this and you want to go back to the regular terminal, you can press the F10 key. So if you press F10, you can then exit this. However, inside Ubuntu Linux, the F10 key is already assigned to this little tab. So what you can do is simply to click close there, or you can press exit. So you'll see you have a little terminal window on the bottom here. So you can simply type exit, and it will exit the Midnight Commander program. Now, one thing you can also do is type commands in there. So because this is a command line, you can type the commands you already know. So it's great if you want to do things as you normally would do, but still have the ability to practice the commands. So let's say we want to list the files in a folder, we can press ls, and you'll see that's already done. Let's try the current directory, pwd, and you see it does those commands. However, it doesn't show any output. That's because those commands are run in the background. So they are run, but they are not shown. So if we type exit, you'll see it did those commands in the background. So you'll see it did the list commands and it did the pwd commands, but it's not showing that while you use the Midnight Commander program. So you can use you can type commands, but it won't show them. However, there's an option. So if you press Ctrl O, switch. So press Ctrl O, you are inside that normal command line. Press Ctrl O again, and you're back into Midnight Commander. So let's say we want to quickly go around the file system. So let's say we go into the videos directory. We press Ctrl O, and you'll see we are inside the videos directory. Ctrl O, back in Midnight Commander. Let's go to another directory, say documents. We press Ctrl O, we're in the documents directory. So instead of typing CD, you can use this to quickly navigate around the file system, do all kind of command line things. So it can't do everything that you can do with the command line, but it's a nice little tool that you can use in the meantime. So when you're practicing the Linux commands, and then you can use this program to play around. So that's the Midnight Commander program. Hello and welcome back to the course. Well, you can navigate around the Linux terminal just typing commands like cd, pwd, ls, and all these cryptic commands. Sometimes it's easier to just use a graphical interface to navigate around. So there are terminal interfaces that allow you to do that. One of them is called Ranger. So you can try to type Ranger and see if it's installed in your computer. Otherwise, type the installation commands for your specific Linux distribution, your specific Linux system. If you use Ubuntu, it will be this command, and that will install the Ranger program. So Ranger is a terminal user interface, so an app that you can use to browse around your file system. So I'm gonna install it. You'll see it's quite a small program, just less than a megabyte or around a megabyte. And once it's installed, you can then easily navigate around the file system. So the interface is quite easy. You just type Ranger. That starts the interface where you have several panes. And then you can use the arrow keys to navigate around. So you'll see I can browse around the directories using the up and down arrow keys. You can use the left key to hire a directory. You'll see I can go try to get in the Ubuntu. It's not letting me. So you can browse around the file system just using the arrow keys. So really easy. You don't even have to press enter. You just press the arrow keys to navigate around the system. And then for any file, let's say we press the right key here, you'll see it jumps into the directory. You can it automatically reads the contents. So you can see we can look into the files, even opening them. We don't have to click, we don't have to press enter. We just the arrow keys, so up and down, and you'll see, for example, this file contains hello world. Now, if I use the regular file explorer and go to this directory, downloads, you'll see that it's actually the contents of the file. So quite cool. This also works for pictures. So if you have some pictures, these pictures, you can press enter to see the contents. So for any picture, you see we can simply see the contents. Now you can either press the right key or the enter key. Basically you can use this tool without pressing the enter key at all and without clicking. So really easy tool to navigate around the Linux file system and check out some files. Now it has all kind of commands, so you can delete files and edit files and things like that. But basically it's a really easy way to navigate around the file system. So let's say I quit this program, I press the Q key, and you'll see I'm back in the regular home directory. Welcome back to the course. Another terminal interface you can use to browse around the file system is called VIFM. If you type VIFM, it'll tell you the command to install it, which depends on your Linux system. And once you can install it, it will be a terminal file manager, just like the you saw before. This one can be a bit more tricky to use. So if I type VIFM, you'll see we have interfaces side by side where we can browse around the file system. Now let's say this directory, I want to delete it. We can press the D key twice, and then it asks us if we want to delete it. If we press the yes key or the Y key, it will delete it. N key, it won't delete it. Now let's say we delete it with the Y key. So to delete any directory, simply press the D key twice. Now with the arrow keys you can browse around. You can, for example, go in the music directory, example directory. You can also use the keys J and K. So J goes down, K goes up, or the arrow keys if you prefer that. If you use the right arrow key, it goes in directories. Now you can also use the L key for that and the H key. So you don't even need to have arrow keys for this program. Even using the keys H, J, K and L will allow you to navigate around the computer. But of course, if you have arrow keys, might as well use those, like any modern computer these days. Now this is a 2x2 manager. So you'll see there's this window on the right and this pane on the left, or two panes, sorry. And you can switch between them using the tab key. So if you press tab, you'll see we can go in a directory, let's say the pictures directory. Tab, we're back in the left pane, and we can go in any directory. So you can browse multiple directories at once. The tab key, you can switch between the two windows. So that's with the tab key. Let's say you want to move or copy one file to another directory. So let's say we want to copy a file, copy it to documents, and here we have some file, red.py. Let's say we want to copy this. So press the Y key twice. You'll see that shows file yanked in the bottom of the screen. Press the tab key and then press the P key. So that copied the file from the left screen to the right screen. If we want to delete it, we press the D key twice. So the key D and then press it twice. Press yes to delete it. So let's do that again. Tab to go to the left pane. Press the Y key twice. You'll see file yanked. Tab key and the P key to paste it. So now that file has been copied into documents. And just to verify, we'll go to the documents directory and you'll see it has that file there. So this program is called VIFM and similar to Midnight Commander, but here we can use simple key presses to do all kind of actions. So it can be easier or harder depending on your preferences. It's just another terminal file manager. Now to quit, you'll see if we press Q, nothing happens. So to quit, what you can do is press the escape key, colon, Q, enter. That's how you can quit this program. You might also be able to press ZZ. Yes. So if you open VIFM and you press capital Z twice, it exits VIFM. And if you're stuck in any of these programs, you can simply close the terminal with the graphical interface and it's also closed. So it really depends on your preference. You can try out different managers, terminal-based file managers, and see which one is to your liking. Welcome back. So far we looked at terminal file managers. There's another program that works with files in the command line, and this works slightly different. So it's really fast and it's really different. And it's called FZF. It's often called a fuzzy finder or command line fuzzy finder. So by default it's not installed, but you can install it using your package manager. So on Ubuntu, run this command, or if you use another Linux based system, use whatever command to install FZF. You'll see it's already installed in this computer. And if you run this, it will show you a list of all files in the current directory, including all the subdirectories. So you'll see here there's a lot of stuff on the screen. For example, you'll see the downloads directory with all its files, the picture directory with all its files, the reverse directory with all its files, And just to show you, if we open the downloads directory, you'll see it matches those files. Go in the pictures directory, you'll see the same files here, 1, 2, and 3 here. So you can use this to quickly take a look at all the files in your Linux system. It's really fast. You can just use your arrow keys to move up and down, or the page up and page down keys, and you can see all the files without even opening the folders, because in this one the paradigm is that you first click on the folder and then you can see the files. But with this FZF program, you see the files without even clicking on the folders. In fact, we can see all of the files in the computer system at once, except that it doesn't completely fit on the screen, so we can move down. Now this is not a file manager, so it doesn't allow you to copy file to another, but you can quickly search for files with this program or browse for files. And if you want to search, you can simply type in the little bar below. For example, we can type hello. It will search for any file named hello or with the word hello in it. You'll see we found 3 responses. Now this works not just for names, but also for file extensions. So let's say we search for Python files, .py, and you'll see it returns all of the .py files in this computer. Or let's say we search for images, so JPEG images, .jpeg, and it immediately gave that files list. Now this doesn't do the same things as the other programs that you saw before. So if I press enter, you'll see it simply use the name of the file, but it doesn't open it. Can't delete any files inside FZF, just be navigating and searching for files. So let's say we search for JPEG. Now I would have to use another program to display these pictures. So maybe display and then the same file to open it. Now you'll see I don't have that program display installed, but you would interact with it by typing FZF and then browsing to the file you want, and then you know the file name and you can do whatever you want using Linux commands. So it's not a file manager per se, but it allows you to quickly search for files. Hey awesome people, welcome back. If you open a terminal, you can type all kinds of commands, but you can also edit files from the terminal. So here we have a basic terminal. Now let's say we want to edit a file, a new file, then we can use the program nano. If that isn't installed, you can install it. So the program nano and then the file name. Let's say we call it example.txt. Then press enter and you'll see a command line text editor, which is what this is what it looks like, where you can simply type any text you want. Simple text editor. Now, navigating this text command line is a bit different than you would with a graphical editor where you have a file menu. Here, there does seem to be a menu on the bottom, and to use that, you hold the Control key and press any of the buttons. And so it doesn't show all the options here by default. If you want to save it, press Control and hold Control key and press O, and then press the Enter key. And now it's saved. You see wrote 3 lines. By holding the Control key and pressing the O key, you can save it to any file name. You'll see here it shows a file name there, and by pressing enter it will write it. So if you open a file explorer with the graphical interface, you'll see that it created the file example.txt, and if you open it with Notepad or any other editor, you'll see the same text appearing. Okay, so here it is with Pluma, a Notepad-like interface, and you'll see the same file contents here. So Nano is just another text editor that you can use to edit text on your computer within the terminal, so you don't have to use the graphical interface for that. And it can be useful in various scenarios. For example, if your computer has some issues and it doesn't start, then you might use the Nano editor to make some changes on files. It can be that you are working remotely and log into another computer using the command line. Then you can also use Nano to edit files. Now to quit Nano, you simply hold the Control key and press the X key. So if you press Ctrl X, it asks you to save, Let's say we save and it quits. So to open nano with the file name, and to quit, press Ctrl X. Now this works for any new file name. If it doesn't exist, it makes it. Now it's making a new file. And press Ctrl O key to save, enter, and then hold the Ctrl key and X to quit. And you'll see now we just created a new text file with this content. So that's how you can use Nano to simply open files and save files. You can also search within files. So let's open a file again. Let's say we search for the word example, which is obviously right there. So you can hold the Ctrl key and press the W key. Then type what you want to search. Press enter, and you'll see it immediately jumps to that word. And so you can search for anything. Let's say we search for Frank, Ctrl W, type what you want to search for. You'll see it jumps to that word. So just like a regular notepad or program, you can search for anything in a file. If you have a large file, it might be useful to check which line number you are. So if you hold the Ctrl key and press the C key, it tells you the line, the current line in the file. So you'll see on the bottom it shows the line on the screen or in the editor. So you'll see line 3 or 4, go up, and then press Ctrl C again. You'll see line 1 or 4. So can be useful as well. It shows you also the column, the line, so character 18. Quite useful. Now that's the basic Nano editor. You see you can press Ctrl/ also. Press Ctrl/, you can jump to a line, let's say number 3, and we are directly on line number 3. So with this Nano editor you can edit any file Linux system on the command line. So quite useful. Of course it's not as many features as modern editors, but it can be very useful to quickly edit some file that is on your system. That is on someone else's system, because you can remotely connect to another computer, be on the other side of the world or another place, another city. You can log into that computer and then have a Linux terminal. And then how do you edit files? Because there is no graphical interface, right? So then you can use Nano to edit files. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next ones. Hi guys. So with the ls command we could list files in a folder. You see we have 2 text files here, and with Nano we can edit them, we can open the file, we can write file and more. So let's say we use Nano to open it. Example.txt. And you can make any changes you want. So the basic editing with the Nano editor. And so let's say you make a mistake, then you can undo that by holding the Alt key and pressing U. You'll see that undid the last action. If we do the Alt key with U again, you'll see it is undoing that. If we do it again, you see it just undid that. And now we're back to the original file. So by pressing the Alt or holding the Alt key and pressing the U key, you can undo the last actions, just like you can with Notepad, Word, or another text editor. So if you want to edit a file and you're sticking with some graphical editor because you don't have an undo, well, you won't need to anymore, because with the Alt key you can undo any action. Like here, press the Alt key with the U key together and it just undid the last action. Now to quit, hold the Ctrl key and press X, and you'll see we just quit it without saving. Welcome back. So you can open a text file, and let's say you want to search in this file, then you can do so by pressing the F6 key, so the function key 6. It will ask you, what do you want to search? Now this can be any words. Let's say we search for example. press enter, and you'll see it immediately finds that word you're looking for. Just by pressing the F6 key and then typing what you want to search, enter, and you'll see it finds that in the text file. Now this is a very small text file, so it will find that immediately. Also for large text files, this is the case, but for large text files, it's meaningful because with this 4 lines of text, of course, we don't really need to search. But with the F6 key, you can search for anything. Now if we search for hello here, you'll see it can also search backwards. So with F6, you can search any words in the file. Hey guys, welcome back. Let's say you want to copy and paste a line. So we go to the line you want to copy. Then you can hold the Ctrl key and press the K key. That will copy the line. Then you want to paste it somewhere. So for example, on the bottom of the file, we hold the Ctrl key and press the U key. You see that pasted the line to the bottom of the file now. Now let's say this line. We press the Ctrl K key, hold the Ctrl key and press K. Move to the line you want to go and press Ctrl and hold the Ctrl key and press U to paste. You'll see that pasted it on top. So with Nano you can quickly copy and paste lines as well. If you hold the Ctrl key and press K, you'll see the line disappears because it's cut, and then go to the line you want, for example this line, and hold the Ctrl key and press U, and you'll see it pasted. So really useful options in this Nano editor. It can do a lot of things, everything using shortcut commands, so using keyboard shortcuts. It has a lot of options like this one. You can copy and paste, you can undo, and a lot of other options I've seen so far. I'll see you in the next videos. Hi guys, and welcome back. In this video we'll explain another text editor. This text editor, it can be quite a headache to learn. So it has quite a strong learning curve. Everything works different than you're used to. So, but the advantage is that you can use this editor with single key presses. So it's less key presses in total, but everything works so different that it can be quite hard to learn. So what's this program we're talking about? We're talking about a program called Vim or Vim. It's installed on basically any Linux system. So if you type Vim, it will start the command line editor. And to open a file, you simply type the text file. So let's say example.txt and press enter. And now it opened that text file we made in the last video. You'll see by default, we are not able to write. So we have to go to writing mode. You can do that by pressing the insert key or the I key. So if you press the I key, you'll see on the bottom it shows insert. That means that right now you can start typing. And you can write whatever you want. Okay, now let's say we want to save this file. Then see on the bottom we are on insertion mode. We'll have to go to command mode. To do that, you press the escape key and then press :W, enter. So you have to press quite a few more keys. You press the escape key to go to command mode, and then :W, enter, which is the write command. Now, you might wonder, how do you exit this program? So one way is holding the shift key and pressing the Z and Q keys. That quits Vim. Another way is by the escape key, Q, enter. You'll see that exits Vim as well. So there are two different ways to exit Vim. Most easy is holding the shift key and pressing ZQ. That's a very fast way to quit Vim. That's how you can quickly open a file and write a file. So what about other functionality? To copy a line, you can press the Y key twice and then press the P key, so that pastes it. So W copies a line. So if we were to press the W key twice, it will copy it. And now we can press the P key if wherever we want to paste it. So let's say we want to paste it here. Then we can press the P key and you'll see it pasted that line. Now to delete a line, you can press the D key twice. You see that deleted a line. Let's do that again, press the D key twice, and the line has now been deleted. The Y key twice will copy a line, and then move to the line you want, and press the P key to paste it. So you'll see it pasted under the last line. If you want to paste it above the line, you press the capital P. You see that pasted above the line. So we're gonna copy this line, write whatever you want. So we'll press the Y key twice. Then we'll go to the line, any line, let's say this line. And now if we want to paste above this line, we press the capital P. You see, now it's added above. If we want to paste it below that line, you press the lowercase p. Okay, you can also quickly jump to lines by pressing the number of the line. For example, line 2 and then capital G. See that jump to line 2. We jump to line 5, capital G. You can quickly jump around any text file. So what if you want to select and copy a bunch of lines? So first we'll go to the top of the file or go to the line where you want. We can press GG, lowercase gg to jump to the top. Now we're on the top of the file. Then we can select multiple lines by pressing the V key. Let's see, if we press V, we can now use the arrow keys to select how many lines we want to copy. Let's say these lines. And then we press the Y key twice to copy that. Now we'll go to the line where we want to edit, and then we'll press the P key to paste it. You see that pasted those lines. If you want to undo, then you can also do that. Press the U key, it will undo. See, now it did the last action. You can press the U key, it will undo all the actions we did before. So just like Notepad or Mousepad or Pluma or all these kind of simple editors, you have an undo key, which is simply U, and it will undo the last thing you did. So let's write this file. We press the escape key, :W, enter. And now we'll quit by holding the shift key and pressing ZQ. See that? Set the file, and that is the basics of Vim. There's a lot more to it, but with these commands you should be able to edit any file, to undo last actions if you did a mistake, to copy lines. So it's a very powerful editor, but as you see, with those commands it can be very confusing when you're just getting started. Which commands do you need for which actions? So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next ones. Hello and welcome back. Let's make a script in this program. So a script is a series of Linux commands. You can run one or more commands automatically using a script. Now, a script we make with a text editor. It can be anything you want. It can be Nano, Vim, or a graphical editor. It doesn't really matter. So we're gonna make a new script. Let's say hello.sh. Let me remove these lines. And with the echo command, we can output text to the terminal. So we can say echo hello world. Now, Linux somehow needs to know that this is a script. You can do that by adding a top header, which looks like this. So if you add this header on top, Linux knows, okay, this is a script. We need to run commands. And this is a command that simply outputs text. So echo hello world will simply output text. So if I would say echo, you'll see it outputs to the terminal whatever you add there. So you can write anything, and you'll see it outputs that to the terminal. Now, in itself, not very useful, but inside scripts, that's very useful. So we had a script hello.sh. We need to make that executable. We need to give that run permissions. So you can do that by typing the command chmod +x for executable. and then the file name. So this simply makes the file executable. Now this can be done graphically as well, just to understand better. So if we go to the graphical explorer, we can right click properties, then click permissions, and then you have the option allow executing file as program. So that's what we did with this command. It allows executing file as program. You can do it with a graphical interface if you prefer, but if you're in the terminal, you might as well type this and it will make the program executable. Now, how do we start the script? You can simply type the / characters and then the file name. So this will start the script we just made. You'll see it run the script and it outputs the text hello world. It's a single line now, but it can be multiple lines. So if we open the script again, let's say we add another line. If we save it, we can run it. And now because we have 2 lines, it outputs 2 lines to the terminal. So this is a script. A script can be more than 1 line. So now you see we have 2 lines, but it is not limited to text output. So you can run any Linux commands using a script. This is a simple hello script. So it can contain anything you want. Don't forget to add this header on top, because it will make the Linux know that it's a script, and to make it executable. So either with the graphical interface, right click properties, and then make sure to make it executable. And then to run it, you type / with the script name. Now, alternatively, you can also type bash with the script name. That will work as well. But if you try the file name directly, so if you just type the script name, you'll see it doesn't work. You have to do either / in front or type bash with the name. Either one of those will work. Hey awesome people, so we made a script before, the hello world script. We can run it with / or by typing bash in front. You'll see those letters, they're quite small. What if we want to output some bigger font? We can use a program called Figlet for that. So you need to install Figlet, Figlet. You'll see by default it doesn't do anything. So if it's not installed, install it first. Now, depending on your Linux system, it can be apt or some other package manager system. Figlet, you can output larger text. For example, we can type Figlet hello, and you'll see it outputs much bigger text in the terminal. And this is whatever text you put there. So you'll see whatever text you put there, it is printed to the screen. Now this can be shown or done in a bash script simply by changing the command. So if we open let's create a new script. So we type Figlet with your message, save it, exit, make it executable, and then run the script with either / or with typing bash in front. And you'll see it puts the message to the screen. So we just simply change it to Figlet instead of echo. So echo is a small message. If you use Figlet, it will output large font. So now it should output both. And you'll see it's outputting in small letters and in this kind of artistic way, large letters. So you can do that with Figlet if you want to output some larger text. Now, by default, if you type Figlet, it will use the default font. So it will look like this. But you have an option to change the font. So this is not the only way you can write letters to the screen in large font in the terminal. By specifying the -F flag for font, you can try something else. Let's say banner, and you'll see it looks different. You can pick different fonts. Let's say shadow. You'll see completely different look of your text fonts. Now you can play around with different fonts. So let's say we try slant, more cursive font. See this one isometric doesn't work. Depending on the font, you can output different styles. Let's try Roman as a font. Okay, it doesn't exist. Big font. So there are different fonts in Figlet, and with the -F flag you can modify a style. So with the -F, now which fonts are available will depend on your Linux system. So you'll see we can use different styles to output text, depending on what you prefer. So of course that can be done in the bash script as well. If we use the hello.sh file, we can say Figlet -F and then the font file, save it. Now let's run it, and you'll see it outputs that when you run the bash script. If you want a more graphical output, you can use a program called Zenity. So it's called written like this, Linux program. It might not be installed by default. So Zenity, if it's not installed by default, install it into your Linux system. Use Ubuntu, you can do that with this command. It will install Zenity. If you use another Linux-based system, the command will be different. So with Zenity, you can make graphical outputs. So for example, we can say hello world, and it will create a graphical message here. So you'll see a graphical pop-up. And that can be any text you want. So whatever text you put in there can be part of a script. So let's say we make a new script, and we'll tell Linux that this is a script. So we add the script header, and then we add another enter and the command. So we add the Zenity command, which looks like this: Zenity --info. That is the icon that you see next to it. --text, and then the text you want to put in there. Save it, and then we make it double, and we run it with /hello and the name. You'll see now when I run this program, it outputs that graphical message. So you can add any graphical pop-up you want. If you prefer that instead of terminal output, then know that you can also make graphical outputs using the Zenity program. So that's it for this video, just a little heads up. If you want, you can also use some font styling. So let's say I run this script. You'll see we can use different styles in the terminal. So regular text, bold, and also different colors. So how to use that in a bash script? You can use escape codes for that. So you would output it with specifying echo -e, and then you can use an escape code. So this is an escape code that will make the text bold. And you'll see there are different codes. This makes it underlined, this one makes it red, and so on. So there's different escape codes, and these escape codes change the itself into, for example, bold, red, green, yellow, blue, and so on. So run it, the script, you'll see that output. Of course, you can change the text to whatever you want. So I've attached this script so you can also play around with different text outputs in your scripts. Welcome back. I'm Frank, your instructor, and let's look into command line arguments. So now when we run a script, it simply always said hello world. What if we don't want to say hello world, but we want to say an actual name? Let's change that. So we open the bash script, and you'll see by default it says here world. So the first thing we need to do is to change world into something else, which is $0. So that will output the command specified. So let's save it and run. Hello, and then a certain name. And you'll see here it's not really readable, so let's change the font first. Let's run it. and you'll see here hello ./hello. So .0 is actually the command itself. Let's change it to 1. That should be the first parameter. Run it again, and you'll see now it doesn't output anything because we didn't specify the parameter. We only specify the commands. So let's say we specify a parameter, and you'll see now it outputs whatever you put there. So it can be Frank, can be coffee, or whatever you want to put there. So we do that by specifying the parameter. Now in this case 0, 1 or $1. It can be that you use multiple parameters. So let's say $2. Then it will output 2 parameters. And this can be using Figlet, but also just might use Echo if you want a regular font. So let's say we run it again. And then now we can specify 2 parameters, $1 and $2. It can be any name you want. And you see now it's using 2 parameters. So whatever you put there, now 2 parameters are used in the output line. So the command line parameters, 0 is the command itself, and then 1 and 2 and so on are the command line parameters you can use in your script. So far we run programs and then specified some parameters after that. So if we want to use the information, we would simply type it after the command, which is called a command line argument or command line parameter. It might be that you want to store information inside the script itself. So let's remove the original script and now create a new one. First, we need to know, Linux needs to know that this is a script. Then let's define some information. And you can then output it. And you would output it not like 0, 1, 2 and so on as we did with the parameters, but with $sign and then the name or whatever you call that information. So in this case we call it name. This is called a variable. So it's information stored in a certain computer memory location. So to output it, you simply type $sign and then the name of your variable. If we clear the screen and we can't run it, you see permission denied. Why is that? It needs to be executable. So make it executable, run it, and you'll see it outputs that information. So it's not limited to one name or anything like that. You can define another one, and then we can output both. You see it outputs both. It doesn't have to be in this order either, so you can say this one first and then the other one, or you can use the same one twice. So let's say we put the same one twice. You'll see now it puts the output of that variable twice, or it can simply be another order. So you can play around with variables. You can define any information you want and then output it simply by adding a $sign in front. So it's very useful because your script might have a lot of different variables, a lot of different information it might need in the script. And while you can specify things in the parameter, something like this, it quickly gets very long if you need to add a lot of information into your script. So in that case, you can use the variables. So these are called variables. So whatever name and then is, and then you can put data in there, and then simply use them, putting a $sign in front. Bash scripts support user input. So if you want to have a script that interacts with the user, you can do that as well. So let's make a new script. Delete the old one in case you have it. So you can use this command to delete the old script. And now let's create a new one. And first, Linux needs to know this is a script, so add the header. Then we read from the command line, so you can type read and then a variable, and the user will not know what it needs to type, so let's ask that. Then we can output that because it's stored in a variable. So if we run this program, you will see that it doesn't run because it says permission denied. We need to make it executable. This command makes it executable, chmod +x, and then your file of your program. If we run it, you'll see it asks for a name, and then it uses that name it stores that name as a variable and uses it. Okay, sorry, we deleted it. Let's make the script again. So it reads the variable here, it reads variable name. This will be whatever you call it, and then you use it with the $sign in front. So you output your question, and then you can read from the keyboard, and then simply output it. Now you can read whatever you want, you can ask whatever questions. And then you can use that in your program. Save it, we'll make it runnable. You see now it will ask two questions. So asks your name, and then you for the best system, which is whatever you want it to be, and then it outputs that. So you can read user input and play around with it simply by using the read command, and that will store whatever user types into a variable. You see this is how it's used then. System. So that's how you can use it. If your script gets very long, if you put a lot of commands, instead of just making it longer and longer into some kind of spaghetti code, you can create functions. Functions are repeatable code blocks. So you can, for example, create a function greet, so like this, then put any lines of any commands in there. So let's say all of this we put in the function greet. Then put in 4 spaces here, it might as well be 2 spaces, depends on your preference. And then you can simply call greet. So if you type greet, it will call that function, it will repeat this code block. So say we run it, you'll see it outputs that information because we call this block of code. And you can do this many times. We run the program, you'll see it outputs that many times. So that's called a function. A function is simply a series of commands, so a code block like this. Now you define it with a name, then these parentheses, and then these kind of parentheses. So this is the begin, and this is the end of the function. Now those 4 spaces here before is optional, it's just for readability. So you might use 2 spaces or anything else, whatever you prefer. Functions can have names as well. So let's say this is the greet, but let's say we call this Santa. You can call it with that function name. Now you can have multiple functions. So now we have 2 functions, the Santa function and the hello function, and you can call whichever you want. Now it's not mandatory to call a function. So now you'll see we call 2 different functions, but it's completely optional to call a function. So if we put this in front, this symbol, $sign, we'll comment it out, so it will not do anything. Anything with the $sign is ignored. So if we save it and run it, you'll see now it only outputs hello world, because even though there's a function here, the function is never called. You'll see it's commented out. The $sign is in front. It only calls this one hello, and then it jumps to this function and outputs that. So functions are repeatable code blocks, which are very useful. If you have very long codes, you might split that into functions that you can call multiple times if you need to. Hello and welcome back. So I deleted all the bash scripts of before. And so far these scripts, they only output text to the terminal. What if you want to do something with files? Now remember, we have the touch command. With the touch command you can simply create a new file, but the file is of course empty. So if we try to open this, you'll see there's nothing in that file. So touch creates a file, but it doesn't add anything to it. You can forward things into a text file using the echo command. So with echo you could output to the terminal. If you want to add it to a file, you can use this little arrow, the right greater than symbol or little arrow to the right, and then the file name, for example hello.txt, and that will save the output. Instead of displaying it to the terminal, it saves it into hello.txt. So if we open it now, you'll see it has written it to the text file. We do it again, and if we open it, you'll see it has overwritten it. It didn't add to it. Now, if you want to add to it, first write the whatever you want to write to the file, and then if you want to add multiple lines, you need two of those, so 2 arrows that will add to the end of the line. So if you write add 2, it won't overwrite. If you do 1, it will overwrite the file. Let's see if it actually worked. So we open it with a text file, and you see we have 3 lines of text. You can do this from a bash script as well. So before we used bash scripts to simply output text, you can use a bash script to work with files. So if you create a new script, let's say hello.sh, Linux needs to know this is a script. We add the header. Then we use the same commands as before. So we create a text file hello.txt. Make sure to delete the old one. Then we can write things into the text file. So you'll see I used a single one here that overwrites hello.txt, and now we can add multiple lines. And instead of using a single one, which would overwrite it, we use 2, which adds it to the end of the text file. So save it, and now if you want to run it, you type // in front, but this would give a permission error because it's not executable. Let's make it executable. So right click properties, permissions, allow executing, and then close. Alternatively, type chmod +x hello.sh. Both are the same result. It makes the program executable. If you type // hello.sh, you'll see it created a new text file, hello.txt. We can open that with any text editor, and you see then the output of the script. Now, so far we output text to the script. We can try something else. So let's try to output a command to the script. So now it should output the command output into the text file. Let's save it, run it, and let's see what we've got. So open the text file, and you'll see it wrote a lot of text because it wrote the output of the commands pwd and the ls commands into the output of the script. So you can type any commands you want, and then it is added to a file, and then whatever file you want. So it's not just text you can save into a script, but also the output of commands. So that's it for this video. The main idea is that you can use bash scripts to work with files as well. So it's not just text output. Let's make a new script, say counting, or count.sh. You could simply count by typing echo 1, echo 2, echo 3, and so on. So imagine counting to 100. It would be a lot of typing, or let's say 1000, 10,000, and so on. It would be too much tedious work. So to fix that, you can use a loop. A loop will simply run a command any time as you want. So you can type for, and then I in 1 ... let's say 10, do, done. So this is the structure of a loop. It will repeat 1 to 10 times, and then add in there command. So let's say echo count with the I variable. You'll see the I variable here will change every round. Now, before we start the program, we need to make it executable, and Linux needs to know that this is a script. So that's how Linux knows it's a script. Save it and makes it executable. Now we can run it, and you'll see there's an error there, syntax error. So let's take a look at line 4. And you'll see we forgot a semicolon here. This has to be a semicolon. So like programming languages, it can be really strict. If you make a typo, it won't run. Save it, run it. You'll see it counts from 1 to 10. Now you can change this to whatever you want. Let's say 1 to 1000. Then it will run this command 1000 times. If you run it, you'll see it run it 1000 times. If you need to do something that is very repetitive, you can use a for loop structure like this, and it will repeat whatever commands you put in there. It will repeat it as many times as necessary as the amount you specify top here. So that's it for this video. That are loops. So in case you need to repeat something a lot, you can use a loop. A for loop is what it's called. So that's this structure. Now, not just echo command works in here, works as well with any Linux commands you can put in there. Great, you made it so far. So we can make a new program, and it needs to know this is a program. Then not all programs run the complete code, so it can depend on variables. Let's say we have some number. And we can say if this number is greater than 0, it will do something, and if it's not less than 0, we'll do something else. So you can say if then do something. So if the number is equivalent to 0, let's say else if then the number is negative, lt less than. And then finally so this structure is called an if statement. Depending on the variable value in the variable, it will do either this line of code, this line of code, or this line of code. See, if we try to run it, it says positive. That's because the number is 10, so it's not equal to 0, it's not less than 0, so it says positive. Let's say we change this to 0 and run it. You'll see it says number is 0, so it says checks here number is equal to 0, yes. So it outputs number is 0, and then it skips the rest of the code. Now let's say we make it into negative, so let's say -1, run it. It only outputs number is negative, so it's not equal to 0, so it skips this line of code. And then it's less than 0, so it outputs this, and then it ends the loop, so it continues after that, so it continues here. So you'll see it chooses one of these 3, and then it continues. It's called an if statement, and it has this structure with if and possible other conditions like else if, else, and phi is just the end of the if statement block. You see if we run this, it outputs negative, and then it continues with the program, so it will continue running after. So only in these sections it makes a choice about what to run depending on the variable num. And then it continues running the program as it would normally do. In this video, we'll be talking about file permissions. So if we open a terminal in this directory or in any directory on your computer, you can make a new file using the touch command. So if I type touch, we can make a new file, for example, hello.txt. and you'll see it created that text file, an empty file using the touch command. Now if you right click here and select properties, can be on any Linux file manager, and go to permissions, you'll see that there's a bunch of permissions for a file. So there is a user or an owner of the file, and then there is permissions. For example, Frank can read and write this file or only read it. Which group can access this file or can do things? So you'll see there are different groups, and as a user you can belong to one or more groups. Then another access permission, read and write, and there's the execute permission. So if you click this, the program will be executable. So for a text file that doesn't make sense, but if you have any app like a video game or a web browser or a text editor or whatever, any program, you should have that enabled because it allows you to run the program. Now you can see these kind of permissions using the command line. So if we type the ls-l commands or simply type ll, you can see the permissions in a bit of a cryptic format. So you'll see permissions here, you'll see the owner and the group. Also they show the date of the last modified, but you'll see the permissions. So you'll see 3 sections, the first one, the second one 3 characters, and the third one, and finally you'll have one for executable. So if for example we make a script, using the touch command, you'll see by default this script is not executable. There's no X in here. Let's make that executable, chmod +X, and then the file name, and list the permissions again. You'll see now there has a X here. There's an X several times. That means that this program is executable. You'll see it also became green and there's a little asterisk representing that it's executable. So if you see 3 X's, so an X here, an X here, and an X here, that means that the file, in this case the script, is executable or startable. So if we just look at this file, you'll see that there are 3 sections. The first one is for the user. Then it's for the group, and then for others. So in this case, anyone, the user can execute it. There's an X there. Any member of the group can execute it, an X there. And other users that are not part of the group can also execute it. So these are called permissions. You can change them in a Linux system, the file permissions. So now anybody can execute it, any one of the group, others, and the user. So the first 3 is the user, the second 3 is the group, members of the group, and the final one is anyone else in the system. You'll see it has a minus here, so anyone else on the system cannot write this file, but members of the group can write it, and the user itself can write it. It has a W here. So the first W is for the user, the second W for the group, and the third W is for others, and in this case there's no W, so others cannot write it. Now let's say you want to change the group permissions. So you type chmod G and then -W for remove W, and then the file name. Let's take a look again, and you'll see members of the group can no longer write it. Now, we can also change, for example, that they cannot read it. So we do chmod group dash, so G-R. Let's take a look again. You'll see members of the group cannot read it either, but they can still execute it. So let's change that as well. So we type, as you might guess, chmod group -X and then something. We take a look at the file again. You'll see the group doesn't have any permissions. So the user can read, write, execute, but the user cannot read, write, execute. Still, others on the system can read and execute. It cannot write, you'll see a minus there, but still read and execute. So for others, we use chmod O, and then in this case -X to remove their execution possibility. The file name, list it again. You'll see others can no longer execute it. And we can do the same for groups. For the read permission, you'll see there's still one read permission there. So O -R. And clear it and list again. And you'll see only the user now can read, write, and execute it, and nobody else. If you want to put those permissions back, you'll have to do chmod g, for example, +r with the file name. So read, write, execute. So now the group can again, so members of the group can again read, write, and execute. And if you want others to do that as well, then you can do O, read, write, and execute. If we list it, you'll see that now one can read, write, and execute this file. So those are the permissions, and I hope it demystified a bit how these permissions work for files. So this principle applies for any file. You can make a file readable, writable, or executable, either for the user, for the group, and others, any of them. So let's make a new file, for example, secret.txt, and by default that text file is editable. So we can open it with any editor and write some text in there. You can save it and close it. So now we have a text file here that if we open it with the editor, we simply see text. Now let's take a look at the permissions of that file, ll secrets.txt. You'll see the user can read, write, and write the file. The group can read and write the file, and others can read and write the file as well. Now let's change that. So let's make this file unreadable using the chmod command. So first for the user, so -r for make it unreadable. Then if you take a look, it's still readable by members of the group and by others. You'll see 2 R's still there. So let's remove that. So for the group, not readable, and also for the other, remove that. Now if we take a look, you'll see this file is not readable by anyone. And on the desktop here, you'll see that file still exists. But if we try to open it, you'll see could not open the file, you do not have the permissions. So you'll see a red X here. It's not anymore readable by anyone on the system. We just removed read permissions for anyone on the system. If you put them back, you can simply use the same command in reverse. For example, make it readable. And now the file is again readable. So user +r, if you take a look at the file permissions, you'll see the R is back here. So it's again readable by users, or sorry, by yourself, not by members of the group. You'll see it's still no R, or not for others on the system as well. So if we open it, you'll see we can again read it. So those are permissions. They set rules for files, who can open and write them or execute them. And that's basically all there is to permissions on the Linux system. Welcome back. In Linux, you might have a bunch of files, for example, 1 or more pictures on your computer. And to transfer them, instead of sending one by one, you can create a so-called archive. So here in the GUI, I can select them, right-click, compress. So I'm selecting all of them, right-click, compress. And then I can store them in an archive. The default is .tar.gz. And if I click create, it will create an archive. And this archive has all 3 pictures inside them. So it's a compressed file. It's one file that contains all of the files you put in it. Now, this one can also be decompressed. So if I delete these files, you can decompress them, extract here, right click, and you'll see that extracts those pictures. You see, it just extracted those pictures. So this works with any file. You can have a bunch of files that you have, and then in a compressed archive, so .tar.gz archive, that's the default archive for Linux system. Now on Linux you have other file formats as well for archives, so you might be familiar with zip or other similar formats. So if you right click compress, you'll see you can use zip as well in Linux, and a bunch of other formats here. So there's a bunch of compression formats depending on your Linux system. Now let's say we create a tar.z format, or sorry, tar.gz, the default. You can create it, and let's say we delete these files. We can use the terminal to extract this archive. So how do we do that? We open a terminal first by pressing Ctrl-Alt-T. You hold Ctrl-Alt and press the T key. You can open a terminal or just use your desktop to start a terminal. We go to the pictures directory, which is where it stores that archive. If we list the files, you'll see there's only one file, and we can extract it with the tar command. So if we type tar, we need to add some parameters and then the file name. And if we run this command and press enter, it will extract it. So that is the X of extract. And you'll see I pressed enter and we have those pictures again. Now you might wonder, what are these flags here? So the X is for extract, simply extracts the file. And the F stands for file, so you'll see this is a file, so that's why we specify the F. Then we have the V symbol here, that's for verbose, so output things inside the terminal. And you also have the Z here, which stands for gun or unzip. You'll see it's .gz here, so that's why we need the Z there. So this command will simply extract the pictures of this tar gz file. Now you can create all kind of compressed formats. For example, we can click here, compress, and instead of a tar gz file, we could simply use a .tar file. So that means this without compression. It has an archive of the files, so looks similar as the .tar.gz file, but it is larger. So if we create another one, right click, compress, and we'll also create a tar.gz file. You'll see now we have two, and the tar file is slightly larger. So the tar file doesn't have compression, it doesn't use trickery to make the file smaller, it's just a bunch of files together. And if you have a .tar.gz, it is compressed and so slightly smaller. Now, how do you extract a tar file then? So let's delete all of this. You'll see we have pictures.tar, no compression. And then we don't need a Z for compression because there is no compression. So we simply use this command, so extract, verbose, and we use the file, and then picture.tar. And if we press enter, you'll see we have the so depending on which you use a different command. So if it's a tar file, you use the top command to extract it. If it's the tar.gz file, you use the bottom command to extract it. Welcome back. If you used Windows or Mac before, you might be more familiar with zip files. So it's the same principle. We can have a bunch of files, compress, and then we turn them into a zip. If I click create, you'll see we have a zip file, a file containing multiple of these images. If I click on it, you'll see the images are inside, and we can extract them using the terminal. So if I delete these, I can open a terminal, and if I list the files, first go into the pictures directory, we list the files. We can type the command unzip and then the file name. And you'll see that extracted that archive. So it's just unzip without any parameters. Really simple, unzip and then the file name. And it extracts everything. So you can compress into different formats, tar, tar.gz, .zip, and so on. But the principle is the same. It's simply a bunch of files combined into a smaller one. Hi and welcome back. So here we have a bunch of archives in this directory, similar to the ones you've seen before, but they have different formats. So you have here a 7-zip archive, we have a .tar archive that we worked with before, there's a tar.bz2 format, tar.gz format, .zip format, and you'll see different formats. And one thing you'll notice is that there are different sizes. So this is the smallest one with 244.6 kilobytes, and the others are a bit larger. The tar file being the largest one, and that's because a tar file is simply a combination of the files without any compression, so they don't do any tricks to make the file smaller. It's simply the files itself. And so the other formats, they are using some tricks to make the file smaller, and you'll see in this case the zip file is the smallest, but it depends. So for 3 files, of course, it doesn't really matter if you send 244 kilobytes or 251 kilobytes. But let's say you have a lot of large files, of maybe several gigabytes or terabytes, then it can be useful to know which it can be useful to transfer the smallest archive because it can save you disk space or space in the cloud. Anything else, like if you want to save space, it can be useful to know which one is the best. And the only way that you would find out is simply by trying. So we have a bunch of formats here and they all contain the same pictures. So regardless of which one I extract, the same. So if I extract this one, right click, extract here, you'll see there's the pictures. If I use the 7-zip format, right click, extract here, you'll see there's the pictures again. So it's all basically the same, but the size on the disk can differ. So the program behind it, behind the zip, behind tar, behind targz, behind 7z formats, they are different, and that's why the file sizes are different, even though that the contents of the file are the same. So Linux supports all kind of formats. If I extract it and click here, right click, compress. Okay, we have the compress field here. We can compress these files. You'll see I can choose a format, and some formats, they might be smaller than others. So in case you need to email it or put it on the cloud or whatever, it might be useful to play around and find out which of these is the smallest format. Welcome back. So far, a bunch of pictures, and we would create an archive by right-clicking, compress, and then selecting the file and clicking create. For example, zip, we would click create, and it would create our zip file, so pictures.zip. You actually can do this from the terminal. So if I open a new terminal, and you'll see we're in the Frank pictures directory, so there's a pictures directory here. You can create an archive from the terminal directly. So we can type, if you want a zip file, zip -r, and for example docs.zip, and then the directory you want to put in that zip file, so like this, and you'll see now we have a zip file. It's not here because we zipped it outside that directory. As you see, I'm in the home Frank directory. We can move it into the pictures directory, so you'll see we have the docs.zip compressed file with the pictures inside. So you can simply type zip -r, then the format of your zip file and the directory. Now, if you don't want a zip file, but for example a tar file, then you can use the command tar -cvf, then the file name, for example docs.tar, and again the directory. And again, it stores that directory in home Frank, so you might want to move it into the pictures directory, and now we have the docs.tar file, which contains the same 3 photos. Now, you might remember from the previous videos that a tar file doesn't use any compression. It doesn't do anything to make that file smaller. In that case, you'll see this is 256 kilobytes. It can be smaller if we use compression. So we can create a tar.gz file using this command, tar. So the same as before, but we add a z there for compression, and then we'll call the file docs.tar.gz of zip compression. And you'll see that it should be slightly different, sorry. You need to use the flags czvf, and you'll see that created the docs.tar.gz file. You can move it to the pictures directory, and you'll see it's 244 kilobytes. So of these, of course, zip is the most easy. With the zip file, you simply type zip -r, the file name, and then the directory you want to zip. Could be pictures, and we move that file into the pictures directory, and we have our zip file. So zip is the most easy command to remember, zip -r, your file name, and then the directory. The others you can make as well, but they require a little bit more typing. Of course, you can use the other formats from the command line as well, but these are the mainly used ones on Linux systems. Besides the formats you've seen so far, there are also some other formats. If we select these, you can click compress, and you will see there are some others like .7zip, .7z, more recent formats, and also some variations, tar.bz2, which uses another compression system, another way to tar.bz2 uses another program behind the scene that makes it a bit smaller, so another than gz, it's bzip2, or tar.xz. It's also another format, and these only differ in the size, so in the file size, so that's why these different formats exist. It's just for the different file sizes, and basically they do the same, but programs behind the scenes, so some of these algorithms might make the file smaller and some a little bit larger. Okay, so you can make those from the command line as well. So let's first try 7-zip, so 7z. You'll see to use that, we first need to install 7-zip. So install that. We want to use the 7-zip format on Linux. We clear the screen and we'll type 7z a, then the file name and the directory. So this command creates the 7-zip format or archive docs.7z. So it looks a bit more cryptic, but you have to type less. Let's move that to the pictures directory, and you'll see now we have docs.7zip. You can use the others, or you can create the others in a similar fashion. Type tar cvgf archive name, so in this case a bzip2 format, and the directory. And let's also create the other one, xc, so it uses another compression system. And then we use capital J here and simply an F. So let's move all those doc pictures to the pictures directory, or all those archives, and you'll see we created the other two archives as well. So any of those archives that you see when you right click, press compress, you can also create them in the terminal. So regardless of which of these formats, it's possible to create them using a terminal command. Of course, it's very easy to use it to do with a graphical editor, but it might not be always an option. For example, if you have a server or your website on the internet, you cannot simply use the graphical interface. You will have to use the command line, and that's where these commands are very useful, where they come in. So that's it for this video. Just know that you can use alternative formats like any of these using the command line, so you can create archives of any files with other formats as well.